Hard to believe we are only 90 days away now from the midterm elections, and the results from 5 different state primaries last night may give us a little insight about what we can expect come November. So joining me to break down some of the races that we should be keeping an eye out, we have Stephen Caliendo with North Central College. Professor Caliendo, welcome.
It's great to see you, Anthony.
Welcome, as always. Let's start with the Democratic Senate primary in Michigan. Paint a picture for what happened here yesterday and why this particular race has such important implications.
Yeah, this was the big one, and we had hoped, I think, that we would be able to talk about who won. El Sayed did declare a victory last night, but only one of the major news outlets is
confirming that.
We're still, you know, there's still a lot of ballots to be counted in Wayne County, which is where Detroit is, and it seems like the gap is sort of narrowing there. And so, but this was a barometer about where the Democratic Party is right now. El Sayed was the more socialist candidate, the candidate who's more progressive, further to the left, if you want to think about it in those terms. And I think that, you know, what we saw in New York City with Mamdani and some of these other races really speaks to where the Democratic Party is going. You might remember in 2010 when the Tea Party emerged as a result of President Obama's victory, and that ended up leading to Donald Trump, right? It ended up leading to sort of a shift, not necessarily an ideological shift, but a shift in terms of approach.
Yeah, it's like a party within a party kind of situation.
There's no question.
We're kind of seeing that on the Democratic side. Now, this raises a lot of El Sayed, if he does win. I mean, that's not confirmed right now.
That's right, but he's winning.
In terms of electability in November, what are your thoughts there? Because there's a lot of people, you know, there's this, you know, phrasing like, you know, defunding the police. You know, I know
That's right.
General population, like, is this going to fly in November?
You know, one of the things, as you know, that I study is political communication, and I think the communication for this particular campaign, not only in Michigan Senate race, but across the country, is going to matter. We saw some indications of this from Speaker Johnson in some of his electronic communication, where he's sort of making the Democratic Socialists of America into a boogeyman by taking some of the language that you just mentioned and sort of extrapolating it into things that he thinks that the public will understand. I'm here to tell you, though, I think younger people aren't scared of some of these labels and some of the words that we have been using historically to talk about these things. So I think when you say defund the police, a candidate would say we need to divert some money that we have been giving to police to handle mental health to people who are professionals in handling mental health. So it's going to be an argument about words. It's
words, syntax. You know, they carry a huge amount of weight. All right, I understand there's another important implication for the Missouri House primary in one of the races.
I thought it was an interesting one. So Cori Bush, who sort of came
the squad, right?
That's right. She was part of the squad, and she, as the current incumbent who beat her last night, emerged sort of after the Ferguson protest, right? Cori Bush served 2 terms and then was beat in a primary 2 years ago. She tried to get that seat back, but again, very similar to what we saw in Michigan in terms of her being the more progressive candidate and her opponent being the more establishment candidate, but she didn't even come close to winning that seat back last night.
So there's not like a consensus. We are in just the gray zone right now with regard to it.
I think it was Tip O'Neill that said all politics is local, and I think some of that is true, especially when you talk about congressional races. It's hard for us, though, because we're sitting here talking about Michigan and Missouri, because there are national implications to all of this. But at the end of the day, it's only the voters in those states, or in the case of Missouri, in that congressional district, who get to actually cast votes.
Something crossed my feed yesterday. It was I can't remember her name right now, but a candidate for Wisconsin governor saying something along the lines of, hey, you tweeted out years ago that we should cancel Thanksgiving.
That's right, the cancel Thanksgiving candidate, right? And so there's no question that kind of language is going to be used in an ad against her if she ends up winning the primary, which I think is coming up in a week or so.
It's coming up in a week or so. Professor Caliendo, any other races or dynamics that you think that we should be paying attention to with 90 days out before these primaries?
Here's what I want you to think about. First of all, remember how close the House is. We know the Senate's close too. The House is really close. 435 elections going to be happening in November. Every single one matters. There was a seat, a Republican member of Congress in Western North Carolina just yesterday agreed to step down amid an ethics investigation and report that there were allegations of inappropriate conduct. That's going to leave, that's an open seat now. Now, he was going to be in some trouble anyway, I think, because the Democratic challenger spent a lot of money to get that nomination. But now that's an open seat for the Republicans too, and I think the Democrats will look at one more possibility of picking up a seat in the House in November.
We've been concentrating on the Democrats. On the Republican side, what's the current status of infighting there? I know there's this dramatic situation unfolding out of Ohio with regard to Senator Moreno and then his former son-in-law, Max Miller.
That's right. Yeah, that one's an important one too. And so look, we talked about this with Graham Plattner in Maine, right?
Yes.
When you have a candidate, well, in this case, it's an incumbent House member, but in the case of Maine, it was simply a candidate who have credible allegations against them. On the one hand, you say we have due process in this country. An allegation is not an indictment, not let alone a conviction. On the other hand, you say, look, we're talking about public life here, public sphere. We're not talking about removing your liberties. Should you be still running for? And remember, it's the party folks who want to make sure that they have the best candidates running in November.
Yeah.
Any of this kind of baggage can be harmful to them, and so the infighting really gets exacerbated as a result of those political implications.
You mentioned Graham Plattner, his replacement going up against Susan Collins, and she's actually threatened to hold her vote for Todd Blanche, too.
That was interesting yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? And you got to wonder if it was not an election year, if that's a decision she would have made. It's interesting.
Right. How does that race look to be playing out in Maine at this point?
We still have a long way to go, but there's no question that Susan Collins, that decision yesterday to sort of hold her vote on the Todd Blanche is angling about an election.
Right.
And so she's worried. There's no question about that, and certainly the National Republican Party is worried, because if they lose the Senate, that's very different than losing only the House, right? And not being have control of any of the two branches of the legislative branch. It's an issue, and we will know in November.
We will. 90 days away. Professor Caliendo, thank you so much.
It's great to see you.
You too.